If you're sick of looking at these, and these, and these, and sick of looking at this, and this, well, this is the video for you. We're going to be doing it on this. So this is going to be a video about making a retro server to serve retro stuff to other retro machines. This is my IBM X series eServer 206, which I did a video about a little while ago. So you can watch that if you want more specific details about the machine, because we're not really going to go into them in this video. And the idea is to use a little network switch, which I have a few of in a box here, and I want to hook up the IBM to one of these permanently, and then any other machine that I'm working on, I can just plug it in and access stuff across the network. So the plan is to put files and operating system images onto the server, and I'll never have to mess around with floppy disks or CDs ever again. So I just grabbed a few things together just to knock up a quick test system. This is basically just going to be to do a clean install of Windows 98 on, and the idea is to use Norton Ghost to do some imaging so that we can grab ghost images and pull them across a little network onto any machine, and then over time build up a library of ghost images of all the classics, DOS 6.22, Windows 98, Windows 95, and also images of my specific OEM operating systems, you know, the branded stuff you get with your Sonys and your Olivettis and all that kind of thing. So basically this is all the usual stuff. Once Windows 98 was on the hard drive, I got all of the benchmarks I can think of that I usually use, all of the games I can think of that have benchmarks built into them. So basically what we've got is a clean install of Windows 98, no drivers, and a whole bunch of games and benchmarking utilities. So it makes a good starting point to make a Windows 98 image that we can dish out to other machines. So the IBM board, this is it, I've just taken it out, and you can see it has issues with its SATA ports. The plastic has become very brittle. I thought I want to do something about that because I want to put a real hard drive in this, but I want it to be a more recent, slightly more stable one. I want to use SATA on it so I can use something that's newer and more likely to last. So I bought some replacement thingies, as you can see here. I bought they're the wrong way round, the wrong fit. You can see the plastic tab should be on top, not on the bottom, so I'm going to have to bend the pins in the opposite direction to make them work properly. But yeah, they're a bit tricky to get out. It's the first time I've replaced SATA ports, but they did come out eventually with a bit of wick and a bit of the sucker gun and a bit of jiggling and a bit of brute force, and we got some new ports on there. There are a couple of bulging caps on this board that I noticed that I need to replace at some point as well, but they'll survive for now. So rebooting, everything seems to be fine. The machine now has a SATA hard drive and a SATA DVD drive. It survived my ham-fisted surgery and booting into Windows 2000 nicely. I have a small 60GB SSD kicking around. Haven't seen one of these for a long time. I remember this is what I was buying when the SSDs first became a thing and they became affordable. But yeah, I thought this might be a good little addition to this machine because I want some backup storage to keep all my images and things on, something that can make sure that if the hard drive fails, I don't lose the images, because they take ages to install and all of the files that I'm going to be putting on here in the future. Unfortunately, this thing just wouldn't work. I mean, the hard drive works fine. When you go into the BIOS, it identifies it. It can see it's got two hard drives. But the boot sequence in this IBM BIOS, it just says hard drive. You can only choose hard drive. It doesn't let you select which hard drive you want to boot from. And I switched this between the two SATA channels, and it didn't make any difference. It was always trying to boot from the SSD first, which doesn't have an OS on it, which was intensely annoying, and I couldn't be bothered to reinstall Windows 2000 from scratch, having put a few things on here. So that was a bit disappointing. I couldn't figure out why it wouldn't let you specify exactly which hard drive you want to boot from first, but we'll just forget about that for now. So yeah, not sure what was going on there, but at least the OS is running happily on a more modern traditional hard drive. So back to the pile of stuff that I was installing Windows 98 onto. Now I've got a version of Norton Ghost, or Symantec Ghost it is in this case. Norton being the home version, Symantec being the enterprise brand. And yeah, in here there's a whole bunch of crazy settings, most of which I don't think I care about or want to mess with. So yeah, apart from that, it's just a case of going in and saying, yeah, it's a local machine, and then you just choose your source drive, which is the C drive on this machine, and you can't create an image on the same partition as the one that you're actually creating the image from. So I've got USB stick in there, just browse to that and set it away, and there she goes, the first image of my soon-to-be mini retro file server network thing. The reason why I chose Ghost is because we used to use it at work mostly. There are other versions of things available, Acronis, Clonezilla, a whole bunch of different options. But yeah, back in the day at work we used to have a test lab with about 100 machines in it, and we used to use Ghost off a server just to pull images out, so you could deploy the same image to all of the machines simultaneously, or you could just pull individually as and when you wish. So it seems like a nice little setup, and I think I'll go with this. And there are other versions. I'm thinking the more I read, I might try Ghost 2003 as opposed to this one and see how that works, but we'll get to that when we get to setting up the server. So there it is. It took about 6 or 7 minutes, and if we go into our C drive, yeah, the other thing is, it says Norton Ghost always runs in DOS, so you may have problems on some machines. I'm not sure. That it can build its own disks using PC DOS, or you can pull in MS-DOS files, but either way it drops itself out into DOS whenever it does its imaging. So yep, there we've got 2 Windows 98 files. There's the GHO file and there's a GHS file. The GHO file is the main Ghost file, the image file that you load, and the GHO file, I'm not exactly sure what it does. It has to be in the same folder. It carries some extra bits and pieces that go along with the GHO file, but the GHO file is the main image. So now we can go on to the server machine, the IBM, and I'm going to install Ghost 2003, I think, and try and run with that, just because it feels a bit more modern and you can see what's going on a little bit better because it's got nice menus and windows and things like that. It doesn't drop you straight into DOS. It's still a DOS-based program when it comes to doing its cloning and its imaging, but it has a nice Windows interface where you make your decisions, so we'll see how that goes. So once all that was installed, I popped the machine down. This is where it's going to live. It's going to be awesome just having that sitting there with everything on it, ultimately, once I get it all installed. So yeah, it's looking quite nice, tucked away down there. And then if you move up onto the desk, you can see I've got a nice little IBM monitor with the matching IBM keyboard and mouse there. And then we've got a little network switch sitting up there next to the monitor, which is running down to the Ethernet port on the IBM. So that's the server side of things all set up. I've installed Norton 2003 on the other machine as well. The more I thought about it, I think I want that on all of my images so that I can use it to make new images if I ever add software or remove software or anything like that. On the server, I haven't done anything fancy. I've just plonked everything into a shared folder, shared it with everybody, created the user that's on the other machine on the server so that it can log in. So on the Windows 98 machine, we can go into Network Neighborhood and we can see things now. So we've got the same work group set up on both machines, just called work group, which is the default. And we can see our 2 machines there. The user on this machine is just a username with no password. That has to be set up on the server as well, on the Windows 2000 machine. And then we've got our shared folder there, which has got stuff in it. So the protocols I used on this were pretty straightforward. So it's just TCP, IP and NetBIOS on both machines, and also Microsoft Client on this machine. And yeah, simple as that. And then you can see stuff, and you can go ahead and try and pull that image down. So we've browsed over to the shared folder on the other machine. We're going to choose the C drive that we want to pull it onto. Click next. You can choose whether you want to overwrite the current operating system, click next, and then it will drop out into the DOS program the same way that 7.5 did earlier. You click run now and it's going to tell you that I haven't got my network drive mapped properly. So that shared folder on the Windows 2000 machine just has to be mapped to a drive letter, which I did. I went and mapped it to Z, and then you just see it as another drive on this machine. And then we'll try again. And there you go. You'll see it all works nicely this time. It gives you a time on the bottom there, so we're looking at about 8 minutes or something to restore the image, which is certainly going to shave off a bit of time for loading Windows 98, never mind the software, the benchmarking software and the games and things you'd also have to install, so should be a super time saver. So what we should see here now is it comes to the end of its restore from the ghost image across the network. It should drop out of the DOS program, and then it should restart the PC, and theoretically, if it's restored the image correctly, it should just load up that version of Windows 98 that we made the image of at the beginning. So what I'm expecting to see here is a lot of message boxes saying I don't have drivers installed, and then what I'm going to do now is load all of the drivers that I need for this particular machine, because I use it a lot for testing and stuff, and then create a new image with all of the drivers and things on there so that I can just create instant Windows 98 installs on this machine. So it seems to be booting up quite nicely. We can see straight away we've got missing components. These are networking components. I think they're to do with the Microsoft Client protocol, which won't be installed on this machine. It's probably looking for stuff to reconnect across the network, because I don't know whether it looks at the other machine at this stage looking for the mapped network drive. Probably not anyway. So this is just basically network components that would need to be reinstalled. I want to have those network components installed on all of my ghost images anyway, so as soon as I restore them I can still see the server. And yeah, so here we go, we can see lots of things missing. So it's just going to be a case of going through and installing all of the bits and pieces I need for this motherboard. I think it's a VIA chipset, so we need to get all of that. One thing I forgot to mention before is I'm going to disable the VIA Ethernet on this machine, and I'm going to use the 3COM card, because if you ever need to do any shenanigans with the Norton Ghost settings, it's better to have a card that's well recognized rather than something that's a bit niche. You can create things like boot disks from Norton, which will allow you to boot up straight into the Norton environment, but it needs to have a network driver on there. So, you know, it's probably going to be easier to do something like a 3COM driver or something that's well recognized, as opposed to trying to get a via motherboard Ethernet driver and get that onto the disks. So yeah, I'm going to be using a more standard Ethernet card, and that'll be the only thing I disable off this motherboard. So we've got all of the drivers I think that I want on this machine installed now, and we're going to take a new backup and make a new ghost image. So we're in 2003 now, whereas last time we did it in 7.5. It's all menu driven, Windows, easy. You just choose the disk you want to back up, which is C, and then you choose the destination. So you can't do it on the same partition. What I've done is created a second partition on this drive, so I think in future I'll have a small second partition on all of my drives, so that if I ever want to back them up I can always have a place to back them up to. So I think these things run at about 300 megabytes, so you don't need much of a second partition, so it's not a big deal. And that's it, off it goes. So it's creating a new backup. So for this machine, hopefully at the end of this I'll have a ghost image that has all of the drivers apart from the ones that I don't want. So I've already said that I've got rid of the motherboard Ethernet and put a driver on for a card that I'm going to use for all of these backups. So I'm going to swap that 3COM card. I've got similar cards for the other machines. I've left out graphics cards and sound card drivers for this, because they're the things I mainly test on this machine, so I want a nice clean install to be able to load up drivers for whatever it is I'm looking at any given time. And yeah, off it goes. Let's see if it creates something that's restorable. And that seemed to go through smoothly, so I ended up with two new files, the same as I did from version 7.5, a GHO file and the other file that you need to have alongside it. So now that I've got a network, I don't even have to go to the other machine. I don't even have to copy them onto a USB. I can just browse to the IBM machine on Network Neighborhood and push the two files across, which it took a few minutes. It's not the fastest thing in the world, but yeah, you can do these kind of things and go make a cup of tea. So there's a lot less hands-on and just setting up all the retro machines from now on, I think, using this little network and ghost images and all that kind of stuff. I just need to get all my files onto that machine as well, and yeah, everything will be there to hand. So that'll be pretty damn cool. Okay, so now that that copying's finished, we'll set the file extensions to show and all that kind of stuff so we can see what we've got, and then we can go over and take a look on the network, and bang, there we go. So we've got two separate images over there now. We can see the new one, which is the test rig one, and we've got the original one, which is a bare bones Windows 98. So we've got one for the test rig and one that we can use generically, and all that remains now is to see if we can pull it back over and overwrite this machine with the new stuff and all the drivers, because everything's on at the minute. What I'm going to do is just uninstall a couple of things and delete a few things. So I uninstalled 3D Mark 99, and then I also went in this DirectX 7 benchmark folder, which has the DX7 benchmarks in it, deleted that, and went in and got rid of the I got rid of the 3COM Ethernet adapter, and then realized I actually needed it to see across the network, so never mind. But we've got a couple of things missing, so we know for sure that when we go into Ghost and set it to restore, that it has actually replaced the operating system that we've got at the minute. So yeah, just the same thing again. It's all super easy on here. We did backup before, now we're hitting restore, and it's a similar kind of experience, except the window keeps on opening in the back, which is quite annoying. And yeah, same thing again, just go across. We've got the mapped network drive. You can see we haven't got it mapped, so let's go and map a network drive. Okay, so I'm not quite sure where that drive went to, but we'll remap it. So it's only Norton Ghost that needs a map drive, but I haven't quite decided how I kind of want to organize things on this server yet, so this is more of a kind of proof of concept than a final thing. But mapped network drives seem like a nice solution to, because you can just see them in my computer on the other machine as opposed to having to go into the network each time, and I can categorize things into different folders and map them to different drives. So we'll probably revisit this whole setup at some point in the future as I evolve it and as I add more kind of different OSs to the whole setup. And then when we go back over to the client machine, we can now use the browser on Norton to go to that network drive. But if we just have a quick look, you'll see that, yeah, now you've got drive Z, and you have to map it here in the client, so you have to put the path in so it knows where Z is on the other machine. And once you've done that, you should just be able to browse to it in the normal way without having to mess about going into network neighborhood and into the work group and all that kind of stuff. I wish I'd chosen a shorter name for that machine. I should have just called it IBM instead of IBM blah, blah, blah. But yeah, made it a bit painful for myself, but I can change that later on when I tidy things up. Like I said, probably be coming back to this in the future and evolving it and making it a smoother experience and just seeing how it performs. I mean, I'm just doing Windows 98 here. Imagine it's going to be the same with Windows 95, but you know, DOS and XP might prove a different kettle of fish altogether. So now we can browse, go to there, we can see the drive Z just listed there now, and choose our C drive. Overwrite this version of Windows, which has the missing files, remember, so hopefully at the end of this they should reappear and all of the drivers should be there, so you should be able to boot back into it. It's going to ask for the graphics card and stuff, but should have a minimal bunch of stuff to install. One thing I did notice, when you reboot into the DOS program, it can get a bit finicky. I mean, sometimes it takes a couple of goes before it recognizes the server. I don't know why that is. So you go into here and it seems to have a bit of trouble contacting the DHCP server for its IP address, and it kind of goes around in circles. If we just wait a second, we should see it, and what it does is it asks you for the login for the server, which is the same login as this machine, so you won't have to remember it. It'll actually say, is this user such and such, and you say yes it is, and I don't have a password. That saves the trouble of having to remember things like that as well. So Ghost just goes off and does its thing once the login's complete, and it finds the server. And yeah, the whole thing takes about 8 minutes. It's really quite a revelation. Why I just didn't sit down and do this before, I don't know. But you know, when you think about how long it takes, when I usually make a video, I'll sit down and wipe the machine, reinstall Windows 98, get the boot disk out, get the CD out, then you get Windows 98 after about 20 minutes. Then you install your benchmark software and drivers, and that takes another 15-20 minutes. Then you install some games to do benchmarks, and that takes another 15-20 minutes, and then the space in between, the whole thing can take, you know, an hour and a half or something. It's just mad. Here it is, all done in 10 minutes. Yeah, it's that simple as that. So it drops out the DOS program, reboots itself, comes back into Windows 98, and straight away going into the desktop you can see the DirectX 7 folder that I deleted before is there again, and also our 3D Mark 99 has reappeared freshly installed. So that's proven that we've wiped the operating system that was on it and got a completely new version with all of the software that we want ready installed in 10 minutes. It's crazy. So all I did on this machine now was I installed the motherboard drivers for sound and video. So there's a Savage 4 Pro chipset for graphics, and we've got AC97 built into the board as well. Got those drivers put on in just a few minutes, and then we're ready to run some stuff and do some stuff. There it is. We've got the IBM server under the desk, which is where it's going to live permanently. The space above it is going to have whatever machine I'm currently working on. Plug it into the switch and they can talk to each other. We can get a library of images set up on the server for all of my main machines, and some sort of vanilla DOS, vanilla Windows versions to deploy to anything that I want. And my whole experience of installing retro stuff will be much, much quicker. Though I'll still probably install stuff from time to time because I like the experience of the floppies and all that kind of thing, because it's part of the retro thing. But when you're just trying to get something done, this is going to make everything much, much simpler. So of all of the retro projects I've done in my time of being into retro computers, I think this has been the most rewarding and probably the most fun as well. It's just great to have a real retro server. It's an old machine and it's got SATA, so it's got a fairly modern hard drive in it, which should be fairly robust. I am going to put some backup. I'll probably just back up to a USB drive, to be honest. I'll have a USB drive permanently in the back, and we'll duplicate everything so that if anything happens to that drive, I should be okay. But just, yeah, having it all organized like this is just great. I've got a space now where whatever machine I'm going to work on can be placed and immediately get a fresh copy of whatever operating system I want at any given moment. And yeah, I've got to get some files on this stuff. I did create a bit of a filing system, which you can see here just to start with. So I've got a few of my motherboard driver sets on there and a few sound card drivers and things like that. It's going to take a while to build this up, but ultimately I'll have everything I need for every machine, and as I get new machines and new motherboards and what have you in, I can just get the drivers, all different variations of the drivers in fact, and just have them all on here in a little library. So kind of like having my own Vogons driver library in my room. So cool. So that's it. It was a rewarding, fun and constructive project to do. I'm glad it's all set up. It's going to make things a lot more fun to do in the future. So the next video will probably involve backing up something onto this machine. I'll probably be seeing quite a bit of it over the next few videos as I build up the library and stuff briefly. But yeah, that's it. If you made it this far, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you'll consider subscribing and liking and all that kind of stuff, and I hope to see you next time. Thanks for watching.